Okay, now the online mic is on, and we're about to start the live stream. So we'll keep eating. Please feel free to get up and get dessert or second helpings or anything else you want, but let's not clatter dishes. That's my only request. Let us pray. O God of unchangeable power and eternal light, look favorably upon your whole church, that wonderful and sacred mystery. By the effectual working of your providence, carry out in tranquility the plan of salvation. Let the whole world see and know that things which were cast down are being raised up, and that things which had grown old are being made new, and that all things are being brought to their perfection by the one through whom all things were made, your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. First of all, a word of welcome to everybody, but most especially to the kids who are here today. It is so great to have children amongst the serious business of annual meeting. And as we have learned in church, it's really nice to have kids amongst us during the service. It's nice to have them here. And if they need to wiggle a little bit, that's one of the things that's wonderful about having them here. And they may need to get their grown-ups to get up with them and wander around a little bit from time to time. But we have long since realized that's not disruptive. So it's great. I want to talk just for a couple of minutes about some points, some ideas that we have been guided by in this past year of reckoning with how to give Trinity a sustainable future. I talked a little bit about it in my sermon just now, but let me talk in more practical terms. There's a guy named Rick Reinhardt who actually spent a number of years working in Buffalo for the city government, also helping to organize and start and launch the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. And he was involved in a couple of other things here in Buffalo that I can't remember the names of, but you would. And so he thinks of himself as a friend of Trinity in particular, even though he has become a friend of many churches around the country as a consultant on how to cope with the issues that we're facing, because churches all over the country are facing these issues of church attendance culturally decreasing, old buildings that were always really big but were once upon a time were new and were full are no longer easy to maintain and easy to pay for, not only because congregations are smaller, but also because the buildings are just older and they have problems that have just developed from being around a long time. And so he's got great wisdom and expertise on that. And Rick Reinhardt says there are three sort of ways of looking at the whole thing that we and other churches like us should keep in mind. The first point is to regard our buildings and our property, our campus, as a public space rather than a private space. The reason churches regard their churches as private spaces now is a shift in culture from, say, 70 or 100 years ago. Churches were built to be public spaces, and the culture supported people in church going. 50 years ago, if you moved to Buffalo and somebody was being friendly to you, they would ask you what kind of church you typically belong to, and would you like to be introduced to that church by them, and failing that, would you like to come to their church with them? You'd get that invitation at least once, probably 10 times, by people welcoming you to Buffalo or to any other city in the country. Tell me about where you like to go to church, I can introduce you, and if you're looking for a change, let me take you to my church. How recently have you experienced that? How recently have you done that for anybody? I'm not holding, this is not to shame anybody and say you should have done it in the last 50 years. You and nobody else has been doing that for the last 50 years. The culture's changed. And so we've come to think of our church buildings as the private spaces of the congregations. They get used by congregations in public ways from time to time, but the attitude is we're going to let those people come in and be with us as long as they behave like us, right? If they want to come do what we do, we'd love to have them do that. But there's a big us-them threshold that is implied in that. And Rick Reinhardt challenges us to think of this place as a fundamentally public space and to organize how we use it in a way that is always for the benefit of the public rather than us doing a favor to people when we feel like it. And if you find my words sound like they don't fit Trinity, Trinity's a lot further ahead than a lot of churches, but we're not all the way there. So let those words sting a little bit and challenge you. How can we go further than we've already gone? Because we haven't gone far enough. We've gotten a start, and as I say, we're a lot further ahead. People have asked me, are you talking to other churches in your same position? A lot of folks ask me, that's the first question, are you already talking to other churches that are in your same position? And I say, yeah, and they're miles behind us and they're not ready to have the conversation. We're having it. That's a great thing, but we have a distance to go. So let these words be a pinprick, a spark, a glimmer of hope if we can live into them. Second, go from simple to complex. We've already been doing that in some ways, and it's been partly by design and partly by accident. So again, we need to make sure we're thinking this way. The solution for how to make this whole campus a thriving public space will be a complex solution, not a single fix this and everything's good kind of solution. Partly that's because for the numbers to work, we have to probably add several things together. We may be on the track of something that's going to be a really wonderful part of that mix, but even if it solves a lot of the financial trouble, we'll still want to use the whole campus as fully as possible for the long term. The third point is that what worked yesterday is not working now, and if we can figure out what will work now, it probably won't work tomorrow. So creating solutions that include the capacity for change, for adaptability, are also important to the mix. So we might do something that will be a long-term partial solution, but we'll also have to create other things that are more flexible and more adaptable to keep changing with the times. Here's what I want to say about these 3 points: going from private to public, going from simple to complex, and becoming dynamic and having the capacity to change. These 3 points are gospel. And I don't mean that they're true. Like when you say, oh, that's gospel, that's the gospel truth, you're saying that's as true as the gospel is. Back when people thought the gospel was true, that was a saying. You may remember that. But I'm saying instead that these are our opportunity to share the gospel, to share the love of God with our neighbors. When I started imagining what it would be like to have a restaurant in the worship space 6 days a week, and thinking of everything that would be going on there, it got me thinking, this is a way for us to be in the world as a congregation, because we've made room for the world to be in our space, in a way that doesn't say, come be cool like us, but rather, you be you and just come use this beautiful space. And then we get to share together. By turning our space into a public space, we get to do what Jesus was talking about in this morning's gospel when he said, let's go to the next place. Okay, these people got it. Let's keep moving. Let's connect with more people. Let's connect in a new place, in a new way. Figuratively speaking, by turning our building inside out, by inviting people to be in the building and use it for their purposes, instead of being cool like us and using it for our purposes with us, we're inviting ourselves into their lives. Not in a pushy, have I got a deal for you kind of way, but in a neighborly kind of way. I used to think that the word evangelism meant this. We've got the good stuff. Come fit into what we do here so that you can enjoy the good stuff too. What I think now is God is with you already, and God is with us too. We want to be with you as God is with us. We would like to share what we have with you and to receive what you have to share with us so that you and we together can increase the effect of God's love in the world. It's not a reversal. It's a kind of subtle shift in some ways, but it's a profound shift. It's a shift that no longer says, the world, without the religion that I practice, the world is damned. And I have to get other people to believe the way I do, or they're damned. It's not that, right? It's, wait a minute, God is already active in everybody's lives in many different ways. I want to share in that. I want to bring what is true for me and learn what is true for you so that together our truths are deepened and enriched and our capacity for love is increased. So I want to say two more little things about how all of this process is going. I'm going to stop and you're going to hear from the treasurer, being Cheryl. You're going to hear from Mark Delabovi, who is currently chairing our efforts for these projects. And you're going to hear from John Alduino and John Gillespie, our two wardens, at least for a hot minute, until John Gillespie rotates off and Erickson Contreras comes in. But so you'll hear from the four of them in just a minute. This fall, since the September meeting, a couple of things happened. One, Mark Delabovi and I spent 10 hours online with people from Trinity Wall Street. I can't believe it. It took 2 days, 2 5-hour webinar days, and I kept apologizing to Mark. I kept sending him private messages saying, I'm so sorry I'm putting you through this. And he kept messaging me back, shut up, I'm listening. This is really interesting. So, you know, I got over it eventually. But he was listening with much better educated ears than I have, and he was getting a lot more out of it than I was. Maybe that's the difference. Anyway, what we learned was Trinity Church Wall Street, that's Wall Street in Manhattan, it's the mothership. Karen Spalding, who was chairing this effort up until September, and she led the report, you remember, from September. In the early part of the process, she kept saying to me, Matt, don't you think we should check in with the mothership and find out what they're doing? And I was sort of nonplussed. I didn't know how to answer that question. Did she mean the bishop's office? Did she mean the presiding bishop's office? What was she talking about? So I pushed her on a little bit. She said, well, I'm not really sure either, but surely you know. Where's the center of authority and wisdom and knowledge to guide us? Who can you ask? And what are they saying we need to be doing? It took a while, but we found out. Trinity Wall Street's the mothership. It is the place within the institution of the Episcopal Church in America that recognizes the need and has the resources to do something about it. Really handy, Trinity Wall Street was founded by a gift from the Queen of England in the 1700s. And that means that they are landlords to the New York Stock Exchange and everybody else on Wall Street. So they actually have more money than God. That's not just a figure of speech. And they're using it. They've realized that they need to use it on behalf of and in partnership with Episcopal churches all over the country. And so they've got a program now for helping churches like us go through the process of real estate development with wisdom and hope and creativity and innovation. And so that was what that webinar was all about. And one of the things that Mark and I discovered was that in the Diocese of Long Island, which includes Brooklyn and Queens as well as the rest of Long Island, and in the Diocese of San Diego in California, those bishops' offices have offices for the mission use of real estate. The rest of us don't have those, but it sure got us thinking, and it got our bishop thinking. He heard an earful about that webinar from us and from others who were also participating in it, and he called his friends and colleagues in the House of Bishops, the Bishop of Long Island and the Bishop of San Diego, and said, "I know you have better real estate than we do, but what can I learn from you?" So it turns out that in the Diocese of Long Island, if you have an old abandoned church, so we have an old abandoned church on the corner of Linwood and North Street, Church of the Ascension, sweet little church. It was there for a long time. We've just sold it for $450,000. That's a good thing, but if it were in Long Island, we would sell it for like $10 million. Our real estate doesn't do for us what real estate will do for you in Brooklyn or Queens. Nevertheless, we can take some of their learnings and figure out how to apply them to our circumstances. And I'm really happy to say that Bishop Sean is sort of in gear. A year ago, he was sort of saying, "Gee, wow, this is really tough. Come to me anytime you need a sounding board." I thought, wow, that's nice. And now he says, "No, we've got resources. They aren't like they've got in some of the other dioceses, but we're going to figure out how to use them together." And so there's some creative thinking going on, and we're going to be part of that into the future. So that's really exciting. Those two things, Trinity Wall Street and what they are trying to give to the whole church, and we're starting to feel a little bit of ripple effect from that just in how we're engaging in the process here. We're going to be hoping to apply to them for grant money to help us with our development process, and on and on. All right, so that's as much as I want to say about all of this stuff. I'm eager for you to hear from Mark in particular about more of the development stuff that we're considering and where we are in that process. But I want to touch on one other thing. I have one opportunity a year to say an absolute huge thank you from the bottom of my heart to the staff members of Trinity Church. Krista drew the short straw. She's here representing all of them, which is wonderful. It's so nice of you to be with us for this meeting today. But Colleen and Paulsina and Rich are on campus all the time, staff members, and our caretakers who are on campus even more, Jay and Sarah and Denise, who live here in the apartment just upstairs there. They do so much. And I'm getting there because Janine's here. I also want to say thanks to Dale Wara, who was here for years, rendering faithful service, keeping the place clean and in good shape for us to use it. And when he needed to step aside, Janine Gall stepped in graciously and has raised the sparkle and the graciousness of the space amazingly in her 6 or 8 months here, and it's really wonderful to have her on board as well as part of the staff. So I can't thank everybody enough. I get to serve every day and every week with lay leadership, particularly with John Alduino and John Gillespie this last year as the 2 wardens. They're each going to speak a little bit, and they're going to do a lot of thanking of everybody else. It certainly goes for me too. I just don't want to get redundant and bore you. But let me finish by saying, as I have every year this time, I think, I am the luckiest priest in the Episcopal Church. And I still think that's true, and I can't wait for that luck to unfold. So you have the finance report, and Bing will share it with you.
Thanks. So if we start a restaurant, I think I want Tim to be the main chef. So you all have some sheets with 50, 60 numbers on them.
Just here.
Okay, a little shorter.
All right, good.
Okay, but the numbers are really in support of the story, and Matt's told the story. Let me tell it again briefly. We had a pretty crummy year in 2021, and 2022 made it look like a good year because it was so bad. And then we had an amazing year in 2023. So I have 3 or 4 sheets here that sort of back that up. So the first one shows 2021, 22, 23. Let's just look down at 2021 for a minute to get some structure. So on the first section is income, the bottom section is expense, offerings, and other income. The other income is any kind of fundraising, any kind of rental office space. At that point, it was still the rental parking lot behind us. It used to be that I would say that 4 or 5 years ago, that offerings would be half of our income and everything else would be half of our income. You'll notice that everything else is drifting down a little bit. And the expenses, the expense side is, and the personnel side make up our total expenses. The personnel, you know, there's 14 or 15 different people in that, including all the music people. The expenses are a lot of fairly small things. So just going down 2021, that wasn't a very good balance. You can see that for operations, we lost $126,000. But our investment gains for that year were $88,000. So as a result, we lost $38,000. That was not very good. It had been better in prior years. But then we came to 2022, and things came apart a bit. On the income side, everything looks like it was getting better. The income was higher, the offerings were higher, the other income was higher, but the expenses went wild. So what happened? It went up by $105,000. 50,000 of that was our elevator, 24,000 was in utilities, and a lot of that I think was in pricing of utilities. Insurance was up 10. So there was a huge mismatch there with the 207,000 loss, but our investments, like everyone else's, fell through the floor, and so the result was a net $400 and some thousand less. So then we came to 2023, and you'll remember, as Matt said, in January, where we were just coming out of a terrible year, and in January we got the news that our parking lot was no longer going to be rented, which was $84,000 worth of income, so that really felt terrible. However, in that line, the other income didn't fall as far as I would have thought it would fall, because there was more offices were rented, more work done that way. The offerings is an unbelievable statement, a huge pickup. $97,000 more, 30% increase. It was an astounding response from all of you. And the expenses actually went down more than $100,000. We didn't have an elevator to go bad. We didn't have to take care of the parking lot quite as much. The utilities pricing went back down. The insurance went down. And we did tell the parish that we were, the church, that we weren't going to do the full fair share, so we did save money there too. So as a result, we still lost $20,000 operating, but our investments returned 40, so it was a net positive year. Not huge, and as Matt said, it isn't recuperating everything, but way better than anyone could have expected in January of last year. The next page is a comparison of 22 and 23 with percentages. I don't know if that was as a good idea. I just wanted to talk about a few of them. The enterprise, you can see it's been shrinking slowly. And that's now because of the parking lot, but if you remember, we used to own a building on Franklin Street. We had more rentals. We had way more rentals in this building too. So that's been shrinking slowly. Fundraising, we really haven't done major fundraising. We haven't had an auction for 4 years now. Weddings were fewer. Let's hope that that will return. Offerings was a huge, as we said, huge and wonderful action next year. Last year. The question is, how repeatable will that be? In the expense areas, maintenance is down because the elevator should last another 30 years. The utilities are down because I thought the weather had helped us until I went back and looked at gas bills and figured out that, my goodness, the cubic foot price in 2022 was 30% higher than in 2023, and I'm hoping, because when I looked at January of this year, it seems to be even further down. Fair share, as I said, we changed it, and we paid $20,000 last year and $50,000 the year before, so that's an open question, what are we going to do? Personnel percentages is up, but the actual dollars are down, so that's how we took it. Enough, the income statement, those figures are all sort of the movie of what happened last year and the years before. The balance sheet is supposed to be the photograph at the end of the year. So this is the photograph as of the end of December last year. Assets on one side, things that we have, liabilities or things that we owe on the other side. So the top three items in assets, bank account, accounts receivable, the investment account at the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo. Those three things, which add up to something over $1 million, we want those to be bigger than the top three things on the liability side, the current liabilities and the permanently restricted and temporarily restricted. Let me say a word on that. The current liabilities is large. It has the loan in it. It's noted there to cover the elevator while we slowly pay it off. The permanently restricted, this is funds that have been given to the church over 100 years to not be used, but to use the income off of them. The temporarily restricted are funds that we've all given for specific activities, like fixing up 393, like doing the air conditioning in this room, those kinds of things where we reserve that money and hold on to it until we spend it on that specific project. So from my point of view, those are on monies that we own. And if you add them up and add up the assets, we want the assets to be bigger, what we have bigger than what we owe. And it's been very close. If you add these up, we were ahead by $1,668 at the end of the year, but we were ahead. Okay, finally, do you have questions? I'll give you my, go ahead, Paul.
I don't get why the permanent and restricted liability, if that's money that was given to us, why it's considered a liability, not an asset.
It's something that's committed. It's defined as for a particular project. We can't use it for operations. So if you gave us $10,000 or $15,000 to put in the air conditioning here, that can't be used to pay the choir or mat or paint the buildings. It has to be used only for that. So it's an obligation the same way that we have an obligation for something that we've purchased. Go ahead.
But it's also reflected in the balance sheet in the asset side in the community foundation account. So we have the money that's in the community foundation account, but some of it's restricted. So this just reflects the restriction. They are the same thing.
If you didn't hear that, they're saying the cash is in the cash on one side and the obligation is in the obligations on the other side. So it is a balance sheet and those are balanced. Anything else? So my questions are, will we have as strong a set of offerings as last year? That seems difficult because I think people really worked hard at it, but I don't think it's impossible to say, well, we've learned that we can do more, and so we may have a good year that way too. Another question is, should we run another matching gifts campaign? Will we have an auction? Will somebody come up with some other ideas to raising funds? We'll see. We'll be making a budget in the next couple of weeks or so to take all that into account.
I see that we saved a lot of money and spent a lot less. How did we do that, besides the elevator?
How did we
Spend less.
Oh, 50,000 for the elevator, 30,000 on the fair share, $10,000 on insurance, $15,000 on personnel. I think that makes about 90,000 right there. I don't know. I didn't hear the.
She was saying something about. What are you thinking about the auction? I'll talk about that.
We need to get advertising out.
We haven't had one for 4 years, and that's why I am concerned that we do and know that people are talking about it, but we haven't defined it into a budget sense yet. So, okay, thanks.
Okay, next fish in the barrel. Mark Delabovi. And I have a committee of Matt, John Gillespie, Sally Cook, Ann Conable, Rick Spalding, and Hugh Russ. And we're sort of the next extension of Saving Trinity, which was the committee that Karen Spalding had chaired. And we're staying in close contact with the vestry. With John. John has attended a couple of meetings, but our intention is to keep them completely up to speed with what we're doing or thinking or talking about on a regular basis. We've met several times since the first of the year, 4 to be exact. We decided early on that our primary goal is to explore development opportunities where we can repurpose the church's property, the campus, to generate additional revenues. That's our primary goal. We spoke to Bing, Matt, and John about what our goal should be. And ultimately, our goal is to be able to raise an additional $150,000 in revenue on a yearly basis. As far as the schedule is concerned, initially we thought that the timeline was short, but we feel like we have 3 to 4 years that we have accomplished that goal within that time period. That'll be adequate for what the church's needs are. Everything that we are looking at and discussing certainly would be nice if it's mission related, but not an absolute must. In other words, there may be an opportunity for us to do something that doesn't exactly fit the church's mission, but will add to the revenue of the church. What we've done is we talked originally about going out for market study to find out what the area would need, maybe go to the city of Buffalo, talk to the community. But what we decided was we would go to individuals in each one of the areas that we were looking at and ask them to speak to us about what they thought of our campus and what could be done. So we've had 3 guest speakers. The first was to address affordable housing, a project that would be built behind us on the Franklin Street parking lot, but as a co-developer. In other words, with another, a Belmont Homes, for example. And in that scenario, we would be there. We would get out of that arrangement. We'd be co-developers with a Belmont Homes, who eventually would be the owner of that project. And our support, as far as the community is concerned, we would be entitled to fair market value of our land and development fees. But that would be it. So in that process, it's probably a 2 or 3 year to get the approvals and financings in place. We get, as I said, a value of our property and a development fee. But at the end of the day, at the end of the project, that is it. We would not be entitled to additional revenues. So that's sort of one possibility. Another would be, and we had another guest speaker, a private developer, where we would be owners of a project. And to give you an idea, we're talking in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 units. And again, that would be a process that would take 2 or 3 years to put together, and would require a more involvement on our part. But at the end of the day, we would be the owners, and we would be looking at a revenue out of that project, probably enough to satisfy our goal. if we were able to make that happen. Food service, as we've talked about, we had a professional in that industry speak to us. That was interesting in that what they brought to us was, you know, we've always talked about a formal dining or restaurant. They talked about a new trend since COVID, which is fast casual food. And where, you know, people are ordering online, pickups and such, wouldn't require probably a liquor license, which would be a tough hurdle to get over. It would be a coffee shop, sandwich shop kind of arrangement. Wouldn't require the church, maybe more the chapel. But it was interesting to hear, and it seemed like that maybe that was something that that could happen. One of the things they did say was, you know, the restaurant business is tough. It's small margins. People are in business today and gone tomorrow. Even good operators. You know, you go to a restaurant, you have a nice time, it's good food. You go back there 2 years later and they're gone. So it's not an easy business to be in. But it's a possibility. And then the fourth one that we've looked at in some detail is charter schools, which John Gillespie has spoke to some people in that business. The return isn't large. We would probably be looking at pre-K to second grade. The revenues there come from federal assistance, state and local federal assistance. And optimum size would be about 80 students. Probably take us 2 or 3 years to get it to that point. 90% of what we get from the government is probably spent on staffing and such. So there's only about a 10% return. It's not huge, but it's one of those ideas that might marry up nicely with something else. For example, if we had fast casual dining and we needed breakfasts and lunch for students, it would work as potential, be married together and have an opportunity for the restaurant operation to make money on our school. I think at first, when we first started looking at a lot of these things, we were thinking, I think we were looking for the one solution that would take care of the whole situation, the whole 150,000. But I think, at least I realized early on, that it was going to be more of a sum of the parts. It was going to take 2 or 3 ideas to accomplish it. Now that changed a little bit this past week with the speaking to the private developer on the low-income housing, affordable housing. But still, I think it's going to be a situation where we have 2 or 3 different ideas, and the sum of that will get us to where we need to be. Our goal right now is to continue interviewing folks, and we want to formulate a recommendation that we're going to deliver to the parish, to you folks, and the diocese, the vestry, April or May. And that will be our recommendation as to what we think will be the best opportunity for us to succeed in raising the revenues. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Have we ever thought about a food truck?
A food truck. We have not, but certainly.
The idea would be to just invest in some very honest, hardworking person trying to do that.
Gotcha.
You just invest, it's going to get part of the problem.
Right. On the restaurant idea or food service or fast casual, whatever, in that situation, we're really looking for an operator to come in and use our property because they're going to know the business. That's going to be our best way of succeeding. Same thing with, again, affordable housing with the Belmont Homes. We would be a partner with them, but in terms of a development of affordable homes where we're the owner, we would participate. We would ultimately be the owner and the property manager and all of that. So, yes, Joanne.
Affordable housing, that's new build, and that would take up the parking lot area?
Yeah, it would be new construction. We've not gotten very far, but the concept is that the ground would be stilts. So we maintain parking for the project in the current footprint, and then second, third, fourth, and fifth floors would be the apartments. We also had the thought, recently, again, this is all in the beginning, that we could dedicate a floor to a charter house, or charter school, rather. So we might be able to do other things than just have it be housing. It could be office or a charter school. Yes?
Thoughts of that just kind of popped up to me today driving out there and seeing the sign out on the highway and then we have the ramp. Just as like annual thing, coin show, art show, craft show, contra dance person, line dancing and so forth, I think sanctuary or like the coin show. We had here, chapel, and here, people can go through the whole thing.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
so that you using space that way
Sure.
throughout the year.
Right. Yes. Yeah, Clint.
Mark, you opened, yours weren't quite open, but you talked about 150,000. You're looking for a contribution of 150,000 to Trinity's budget each year as sort of the benchmark for
Yeah.
income out of our facility.
Right. And actually, the number first came up, though, we talked about was about 115, and we just bumped it for contingency's sake to 150. Yep. And that's what we hope to earn.
What's the update on our income on the new arrangement with the parking lot, pay as you can thing?
I don't know the exact figure, but I can tell you it's not good. It was $3,000 or $4,000, Bing? $3,000 or $4,000 is all we've really earned on that. And unfortunately, again, you got competition, a lot of competition. People aren't back to offices yet. Still a lot of working remote. So it's I don't think that there's much of a future for that. Yeah, Jeff, right? Yeah. Yeah, right. No, we plowed only. Did we plow half the lot? I think we plowed only half the lot. Yeah, for not really, didn't even cover that, no. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. John?
So my mother, God bless her, she kept everything, including old report cards of mine. So if you look at my third grade report card, you'll see reading A, math A, writing C. So I apologize in advance for this. I hope you can see it. I know it's horrible scratch, but I'll tell you what's up here anyway. So, and before we start, I am obligated, Matt had said something about the Diocese of Long Island, and growing up on Long Island, and Erickson is here somewhere, he's from Queens, we're obligated to tell you that Brooklyn and Queens are not part of Long Island. So, so it's in the charter on your birth certificate if you're born there. You have to say that. So about the last 3 years, I've been helping with the stewardship letter, and at the end of every stewardship letter, you'll see something to the effect of these words, which is please prayerfully consider your pledge. And I am standing here with the next thing here, which is an attitude of gratitude, because boy, did you all and the other folks in this church do that. We did a good job this year. As Matt and Bing talked about, we started with a challenge grant of hoping to raise $30,000, and we ended up raising $80,000, which so that's a good thing. We can clap for that. And our annual giving was up significantly, about $15,000. So what that says to me in my heart is this other word, which is down here, which is hope. Because I think that's an example among many of the other things that go on around here, is that we share a hope for Trinity's future and its possibilities. And, you know, the work that Mark and his team are doing, and the vestry and all of you are putting some good. I said in the last two meetings, there's a lot of smart people in this parish, and I think that bodes well for where we're heading in the future. So I wanted to just spend a couple of seconds on this last bit, which is what can you do? And I think the first thing is to do what we've already started, which is ask questions. Ask the vestry questions, ask Mark questions. Be informed as much as you possibly can, and inform them on the many things that you have expertise in as well. The second piece is get involved. Find yourself in Trinity somewhere. There's lots of things going on that you can help with, and if you aren't already, and there's just a lot of ways to get connected. And I think if you aren't already, and many of you are, and thank you, if you aren't already connected with something going on in the church, I can guarantee you, for somebody who's been part of the community here for almost 6 years now, you'll get more out of it than you put into it. And then the third thing is, it's my obligation as stewardship chair to talk to you about, if you can, we want you to stretch your giving as much as you can. Think about and keep this part, please prayerfully consider as we're moving into this year, to consider how you can give your time and treasure to the best of your ability. So I'm going to leave with the auction. Part of leadership is knowing, taking part of when, there are a lot of reasons why we didn't have an auction last year, but what it boils down is that was my responsibility to do that, and we didn't get it done. But I can guarantee you that the auction is going to happen this year. We're looking at June, the February, we're having a meeting next week, I think, Erickson, with the whole fundraising committee. We'll nail down a date, but right now we're looking somewhere in June, and that will happen if I have to stand on my head, jump up and down. Somehow we're going to get it done. So, and then I want to leave you with one quote that I think encapsulates all of where we are at this moment. It's from Winston Churchill. And you'll have to stick with me here because it's a little verbose, but Winston Churchill once said, "Now this is not the end, it's not even the beginning of the end, but is perhaps the end of the beginning." So I think that's where we are. We had a good year this year, so I think we're at the end of the beginning, but we need to push this through and get to the end. So, and as you know, working on the vestry, those of you who've done it, is quite a labor of love. It takes a good amount of time, but again, I personally have gotten out of it more than I've given into it. And John Gillespie has helped mentor me along the way this whole year, and I truly appreciate that. But it also means that he's taught me everything he knows. So by nature of that, anything I do wrong is still his fault. No, but no, seriously, John has been really wonderful to me. He's been a great leader to the vestry and a great leader to this church, and I would like you all to give him a round of applause for everything he's done. So. He's a great guy, a smart guy, and has served me and you all very well. So with that, I think I am done. I think I will shut up now and turn it over to the taller, more good-looking John. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. I'm in the sweep position, and so that's sort of a summary of a couple of things I thought about this year and then a lot of thank yous. in the past, history has a history of how to respond to challenges that are often financial. And as any church does, that's just ongoing. You don't get a year off and stuff like that. And the way we used to solve that is we'd find 3 or 4 people who were not suspicious and assign them a task and say, we'd like you to turn around the church. We need the financials turned around. And it's a 3-year commitment. And for some reason, they would take that. But at the end, everybody was burnt to a crisp because, everybody else was walking around and didn't really know exactly what they should be doing. Those people were overworking, and it was very frustrating. And so this year, and I don't really know whose bright idea this was, but we went to what we call I call an attack mode. And the way this was designed is we asked people to give us from 3 to 6 months to do a project. And then we promised that they could go off and have sandwiches after that, and they didn't have to do anything else. And this was appealing to people because they had seen us not keep our promises before. And so the first group that happened to do this was Joanne Sandell, Kayla Kissenweather, and Karen Spalding. And we said, give us 3 to 6 months and come up and show us what you think we need to do. And at the end, you can go away. So they went out and they did the survey and they did a lot of things and they met quite often. And they gave us a report, and that happened in September, and then they disappeared. And I think they would all say that they were not held accountable after that. They did what we were supposed to do. So then we went to Mark and said, gee, that worked. We promised to do the same thing. So if you take some stuff on in January, you can be done in April. And he was suspicious, but we said, talk to these people. We haven't gone back to them. They did their job, and everything's rolling. And I think, so the bad news for everybody else is that you are now suspiciously candidates for these projects because it isn't going to take your whole lifetime. We think from 4 to 6 months, there's plenty of people with talent that we would like to get more involved. And as we've gotten more people involved, it seems that there are more people who are saying, well, it's only from January to April. It's kind of cold, so I can make that. And I think it's been a significant thing that the vestry and others have latched onto, that these long-term commitments they were too hard. And I think it's working, and I think the people who have done it I think they were kind of more joyous at the end because we're done, and we did a good job. And so I'd like to thank the first committee again very much from deep in my heart to doing that. And this second committee has the same group, and you've heard the names that are on it, and they're well on their way to doing that. So I think that's probably one of the bigger things of why we were more successful and why it's much more optimistic. So that being said, my next duty was some thank yous. Each year we have a volunteer of the year. And usually those people have been here quite a while, been very consistent. And the volunteer of the year this year is part of Explore Buffalo and is the docent for our windows. She's always been involved with the Hamlin Park School. She has done a lot of work in the kitchen year after year. And most recently, she took the follow-up of the survey that the First Action team came out with. And I have worked with her a long time off and on. And Sue Doherty, I think, is an excellent choice. And probably the way with Sue is that she just does these things. And so she's not here today, which would be consistent. She just goes about and does things and does not expect to have any praise. But I think when you see her, and when we get her in church, we'll pinhole her, and I'm sure she will enjoy that. But she's a kind and gentle person that I had a lot of chances of working with when we went to El Salvador, and I think she's a very worthy candidate. So in her absence, I would like you to applaud her. Okay, now we're getting in. I like this, a little more noise. So then my next thank yous are the current vestry that are leaving. So could they stand up? Joanne? Is Joanne here? She left. Well, Joanne did a lot. Judy? Well, you should stand up. And Erickson? Where's Erickson? So they did a really nice job. They were there week after week. They tolerated my sense of humor. Judy had trouble with that, but she was quite forceful. And Erickson, as you can see, did such a nice job. He's coming back to be your junior warden, which I think will be great for the church. So thank you very much. Next is our new vestry people, and they won by a landslide. It's unbelievable. There was no spirited write-in. Okay, we're waiting for that. I'm waiting for write-in sometime in the future, just to show the power of the church. But could Clint Brown stand up? Connie Irving is not here, but very valuable, and I've taken to wearing a suit because she wears those hats, okay? Missy Stolfi, can you stand up? And then Erickson again. That's your new crew, all right? So if we can give them a round of applause. Now, there are some things that I now have caught up on, but where's Tim? Tim Lane? Why don't you step out, Tim? I can't see you back there. You're such a big kid now, you know? And Jeff, can you stand up with him? So Jeff and Tim have been running a Wednesday discussion group. The nice thing about that is it's been going on now for 3 years. And I think that continuity always helps us to do it. And they're also in charge of bringing people along to help out. Today I saw they had a new person that they were showing how to use the computer up front. And I got a close-eye view of how well the two of you were instructing her. She was riveted to that computer when I was at the communion rail. I was watching her, and I knew she was thinking what I was thinking is, if I touch this damn thing wrong, it'll blow up the whole thing. And so I could just see her just touch that thing, right? And it was just, it was encouraging to see you get her through it. But I think I would like to thank them for all they do, and also with Tim. I understand you cooked a bit for this today, Tim. And then Matt and Catherine are here, right? If they could stand for a moment just so that we see who they are. One of the things that came up in the last year is we can now see in the church. You remember that the lighting was a little frazzled for a while, and the lighting was a big cause. And Matt and Catherine did that for the church on their own. And So that pretty much, I just have a couple more things to say. I think when I look at Bing's report, I'm totally flabbergasted that this happened. Okay, last year when we were here, it was like we were in I was sharing with people, it was like we were in a room that was filled with explosives, and somebody was coming up with the idea of why don't we light a couple candles to see where we are. And when you go and lose $400,000 in a year and you have $800,000 in reserve, most kids in kindergarten can tell you how long you have. You don't have long at all. And if we'd had any more of those years, right, Bing? We're all on scooters somewhere else. And I think for whatever reason, certainly it helped that the stock market came back. But everybody stood up, and I think a lot of things happened. A lot of things, people were volunteering to do things. We have a lot of new people in church. I love these little kids because they think I'm funny. And so, and Zoe has been here for quite a while, and she has just such a delightful smile. And I think it's a big help when she walks in and out when you're talking, because at least gets people's attention. But those things are good. And I think we've had a wonderful year, and it's a thing that everybody here should be proud of. And lastly, I would like to just thank people for the support and friendship you've shown me.
I see a hand up at the back. Jill.
I just want to tell the rest of you that thing on there
Thanks. Any other comments, questions? Oh, John. The Windows project is not dead, but it's slow going. It's slow, and both Nisbets, Bruce and Patty, have had health issues, so we're waiting for the next meeting. Yeah, we're hoping to get organized to start work on a window soon. Yeah. Any other questions? Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.